Well, all right, we're back. It's been about 10 months since I made my last crypto journal video, and if you haven't watched that one, please watch that. But similar to that video, I'm just going over my strategy and my opinion on crypto and the crypto space and Bitcoin. And it's really for me, it's not necessarily for you. This is not financial advice, so please don't make any investment decisions based off of this, but this is just my opinion on the crypto space. And so let's catch up on where we are since then. A lot has happened in 10 months. 10 months ago was about December of last year is when I put out the first video, and we were consolidating at this $40,000 range back then. Since then, we had the launch of the Bitcoin ETF, the spot ETF in the US, which since then has seen dramatic inflows and makes Bitcoin much more accessible to large companies and individuals who are reluctant to buy and hold crypto in their own wallets. So that happened in January 11th, earlier this year, and there was a big jump in price since then. Then we stopped around the previous cycle's all-time highs around $70,000, and then we experienced this very long consolidation period. And during that consolidation, we had the Bitcoin halving on April 20th, um, in which the number of Bitcoin issued every day was cut in half. So that is a supply crunch and is supposed to result in a very large increase in price. But as you can see, we spent a long time in this very clear consolidation channel. And it wasn't up until earlier this month, really, that Trump was elected this month, November 2024, and he was elected on the 5th, and it is now the 13th. And Bitcoin is now at 90,000. It clearly broke through that $70,000 range and out of that channel. Trump is very pro crypto in his platform, whether you like him or not. His policies are very pro crypto. He wants to fire Gary Gensler, who has been very anti crypto, and he's the SEC chair in the United States. Um, he also wants to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which would also um, crunch the supply and hopefully increase price. But what we've seen recently is this massive spike. We're now at 90K. Um, let's see, since he got elected, Bitcoin has risen, what is this, almost 40% in about a week, or 2 weeks almost. So that's quite something. In this video, I want to go over a few things. First, when can we expect Bitcoin to top? What is a good price range we can expect it to top at? How long will we have to sell before it drops down again? And what if the history doesn't repeat? So let's first look at trying to predict when Bitcoin will top. Um, from my previous video, you will recognize that I've collected some metrics here. The top dates between average cycle tops, so this is the largest margin of error. Then we also have top dates according to the average time after the cycle bottom, and then we have top dates according to days after the halving, and top dates based on days after breaking the previous all-time high. And I added another one here is the top dates after the US election, because US election, the cycle tops have often followed the US election, which is also on a 4-year cycle. Um, so what we have now are top dates suggested between Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, and Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. So that's a fairly large margin of error, but if Bitcoin does follow historical trends, we should expect a top date within that range. Um, Next, I want to look at some other indicators that are often used. First, we'll look at the pi cycle top indicator, which was created and is found that when this moving average, the slower green moving average, is crossed by this faster moving average, it often coincides with the top of the cycle, and that's happened on 4 previous occasions. Now, I have some doubt as to whether this indicator is going to prove useful in the future. It may have just been a very lucky convergence or some overfitting, but in any case, you can see that right here where we are now, these lines are fairly far apart, so it would suggest that we're not even close to the top. In fact, this yellow line is just starting to curve upwards, which perhaps maybe in this cycle we see here. So this is really just the beginning of the bull market. Next indicator, MVRV score. So I'm not going to go into detail about how all these indicators are calculated, but you can see that previous cycle tops had a Z score within this band, this red band. And so you can see right now we're not even close to being in that band. So that would suggest that again we are nowhere near the top. The Puel multiple also has a spike near the cycle tops. And again, we are very low on this metric, so that would suggest we're nowhere close to the top. The famous Bitcoin rainbow chart indicator may suggest that we are in this sort of darker green shade, which corresponds to the accumulation phase. So we're not even in the hold phase. We're still, this chart is suggesting that we should still accumulate. However, as some YouTubers have pointed out before, this chart may have some diminishing return factor, whereas you can see, for example, if this dark red band was expanded up 2 more channels, it would coincide with this top, and that would suggest that from this top to this top we dropped 2 bands, and then again from this top to this top we dropped 2 bands. So if we're dropping from this orange band down to this yellow band, that might suggest maybe the top would be around here, which would put a minimum of $138,000 Bitcoin. Also, the Fear and Greed Index. This tracks, is sort of a social indicator and tracks sentiment. And unfortunately, it's not very old, so we only have about 1 cycle worth of data. You can see in the middle of this cycle, we had a mid-cycle top, and we reached a score of 95. However, in the actual top, we reached scores of about 95 as well. However, the actual top was only around a 97. So there's 2 sort of conflicting cases here. One where the top is a little bit sharp, and that coincides with the highest reading, and one where the top is sort of a gradual, and that does not coincide with the highest reading, and it actually falls significantly after the highest reading. We are currently at only, well, we went to 84. So that is getting close to 95, so this indicator may suggest that we are getting close to the top. Unrealized profit loss, we are in the belief or denial stage, and based on this indicator, we're at 52%, whereas previous tops were around the 70% range, so we're not quite yet there, 70-80% range. Let's see. This other tool suggests that we're pretty far. You can see that these red and purple lines often coincided with the tops, whereas we're nowhere close to those purple lines. And I'd also like to suggest maybe looking at the number of drawdowns before the peak, because in previous cycles during the bull run up there have been significant 30% drawdowns For example, in the 2017 cycle, we went down 38% there. We went down another 40% there. So it is significant to see many drawdowns. And then in this cycle, we actually had 4 drawdowns that were above 20%. In this cycle, the 2021 cycle, we had 2 drawdowns before the first top and 1 drawdown before the second top that was about greater than 20% drawdown. So we haven't experienced that yet, at least since surpassing the previous all-time high. So it would suggest that we're, again, not close to the top. Another metric we can look at is the relative strength index, or the RSI, on the monthly time frame. And you can see for all previous tops, this indicator, the RSI, reaches into the 80 and 90 zone and tops around a 90 or 95 reading on this indicator. Same again here in 2021, we have like an 8 and 90 reading. However, right now we are only at a 73. So we do have some, this indicator would also suggest we have some ways to go before we reach the top. One other metric we can look at to estimate if we're close to the top or not is the number of times, or sort of the search interest on Google of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. And this often coincides with the top, so you can see that the search interest has always spikes around the tops. And we're at sort of a 50% of the max search they've ever seen. So that would suggest that retail, like everyday investors like you and me, are starting to get interested in Bitcoin. And that would suggest that the bull market has started, and we may be approaching the top. And when it comes to estimating the Bitcoin top price, I'm very careful about this, and I am very liberal with this. But a couple of things we can do. For one, we can take the Pi cycle top indicator and extrapolate this. Let's assume that the green line continues to move forward. Continues to go forward in a linear fashion. And then if we also extend out this red line, which is probably going to curve up. So it's probably not going to continue at this rate, but as price increases and time passes, it's probably going to curl up like this, which is nice because that coincides with the date range, and it crosses at about $154,000 Bitcoin, which is not surprising to me. That seems like a reasonable estimate. Another thing we can do is look at the risk metric. This is the unofficial risk metric. It was actually created by a YouTuber called Bitcoin Raven, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description. The original Bitcoin risk metric was created by Benjamin Cohen. So it's not this metric may not be as accurate. However, from this chart, we can see that Bitcoin tends to top around the 80 or 0.8 to 0.9 risk metric. So the 2017 we were very high here, and 2021 we were also very high in the risk metric, whereas today we're only 0.6. But what we can also do is use this metric to extrapolate the price. So right now, a 0.8 or 0.9 risk would correlate to $137,000 to $151,000 Bitcoin. And that's right now. This does not take into account what the price will be a month from now. So if the price increases a month from now, these prices should also increase. So again, this puts us around the same ballpark as the extrapolation of the Pi cycle top. Now another interesting thing to look at is, once we reach the top, how long will I have to sell? And so let's look at the past 3 tops. First, let's look at the second top of the 2021 cycle. And in this smaller box is the time in which price was within 5% of the top. And you'll see you only have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 days where a price was within 5% of the actual top. And in this larger box is the 10% drawdown from the top. And so maybe within this range, we had about a month, a bit more than a month, to sell at that price. So don't panic. Don't if you don't feel like you need to sell your Bitcoin all in one day, because we may be in that 10% range longer than you might think. Also, in the first peak, we were only within 5% for a few days, but we were within the 10% range for a few months, albeit not the full time of those months was within the 10% range, but we did pop into that range a few times over that time period. And we can also look at the 2017 top, where this top was much more brief, and we were only in the 5% range for about 4 days, and in the 10% range for maybe about the same time. It's really hard to tell whether or not the cycle is going to come to a very abrupt end like this, or a more gradual one with even a secondary peak, like the last cycle. So there's a few theories circulating as to what's going to happen with this cycle. You'll hear numbers on YouTube and Twitter saying expecting peaks of up to $300,000, $400,000 Bitcoin. I would really not pay attention to that. I would not even pay attention to the prices I suggested. In this video, I think what's better to do is to look at all the indicators and historic data and compare that to what we experience now. Some people are suggesting what they call a left translated cycle, in which Bitcoin actually comes to a top sooner than the historical data, which would suggest that the cycle is translated to the left, as in it's sooner than expected. There's also the theory of diminishing returns, sort of on the other end of the spectrum, in that as Bitcoin grows as an asset, there's just not enough money for people to funnel into it, and therefore it cannot have those crazy returns that it used to have in previous cycles. Some people will call for the top to be around 100,000. However, to counter that, there are some more macroeconomic factors, such as the Bitcoin reserve that Trump wants to make for the United States, and the fact that retail interest is just starting to get interested in the asset. This might suggest that there's still some more steam left in Bitcoin, and that 100,000 may not be the limit. I don't know what the top is going to be, nobody does, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and best of luck with investing.